Hi, Celebrant Lindy, Celebrant Training Scotland, talking about public speaking. Because today I got a wee email from a lady who's considering coming on the Celebrant Training Scotland Celebrant Training, yay! And but she was saying that she has a bit of a fear of public speaking, and her question was this: do you think it's possible to overcome a fear of public speaking in order to become a celebrant? Well, I think the answer to that is yes. And the reason I'm saying that is because when I first started out, not as a celebrant, but way before that, I was a terrible public speaker. And I'll tell you the story of how I came to be interested in public speaking and trying to become a good public speaker. And that's because about maybe 15 years ago, maybe even a bit more, when I was doing life coaching, I was running my own business. I was doing life coaching, I was doing hypnotherapy, and I got an email one day from one of these Rotary groups, and they asked if I would be interested in coming along, and it just said, talking about your work. And I thought, yes, of course I can do that. I can talk about my work, about being a life coach, that's no problem. And so I just went back and said, yes, okay. They'd given me the date and everything. Yes, okay, I'll be there. And I never asked any questions about, what do you want me to talk about? How long do you want me to speak for? I mean, it was just, you know what's going to happen, don't you? And so I did no preparation because I thought, well, you know, they want to know about my work, so I'll just talk to them about life coaching and what I'm trying to do. And so I turned up at this event, and there were like 40 men in this room. And it was quite an affluent area of Scotland. So these 40 men that looked as if they'd just all been on the golf course. And we had dinner, because you get dinner. And then this gentleman stood up. We were like kind of at the top table. This gentleman stood up, and he's doing all this kind of introduction. And he said, so I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Lindy Irving, to talk to us on the subject of stress management. I swear to God, I nearly fell off my chair. And it wasn't that I didn't know about stress management. Stress management is actually a big part of what I was doing. But I hadn't prepared to come along talking about stress management. In my head, I had been going over coaching, what it is, who I try and help, how it works. And of course, if you imagine he's standing here, I'm like this. And I'm thinking, holy sugar. And I stood up, and I kid you not, for the next, well, it seemed like forever, but I think I did go on for a while. I think it must have been at least 20 minutes. Oh my God. At one part I had an out of body experience. I kind of floated off to the other side of the room, and I just could see this room full of men looking so completely bored. They were looking at their feet, they were looking at their plates, they were looking at each other, looking everywhere except at me. And I could see myself, and I wasn't making eye contact with anybody. I was umming and ahhing and on, and you know, and yeah, and it was just awful. It was really awful. I felt so bad, and that way you know it's awful. And it just gets worse. You just keep digging. I should have just cut my losses and just run out the door, taken off. But, and afterwards they'd said, oh, you're welcome to stay. And I thought, no way, I will never be back here again, out the door. But as I left that night, as I got into my car, I can remember thinking, that will never happen to me again. And the next day, I got into my car and I went to Waterstones in Glasgow, and I looked for books on public speaking, and I found one. I can't even remember. It was a guy, an American guy. And I took it home and I read it. And in one of the pages, it said, try and get yourself along to a Toastmasters club meeting. And I had never heard of that before in my life. And I thought, all right, this Toastmasters. So I looked it up, and I discovered that in Glasgow, I was living in Glasgow at the time, there were two clubs. There were Glasgow Toastmasters, and there were Southside Speakers. And I thought, I'm going to go along there. And that's what I did, and that's what changed over the course of the next few years. That's what changed my public speaking skills, because when I first started, I was just absolutely rubbish. And I remember Toastmasters works, and it's a public speaking and leadership club, and so it's there to help people to develop their public speaking and their leadership skills. And the way it works is you get a manual, and it's got 10 speeches in it. They're not written speeches, it's themes for speeches. So the first one is about yourself. So you do a wee 5-minute speech about yourself to introduce yourself to everybody. And these are prepared speeches, so you go away and you write it, and then you get up and you get 5 minutes. And everything's timed, and everything is evaluated, and it's a great format for really honing your public speaking skills. And so I was given all these wee speeches, and people give you written feedback, people give you oral feedback, you've got really experienced professional speakers telling you what you do well and what you could improve on. And when it came to my 10th speech, I remember delivering it, and there was a lot of people in the room, because there was a lady, Jane Cameron, who's since become my mentor. She didn't mean to become my mentor, I don't think, but I just kind of latched onto her because she's an amazing speaker. Jane Cameron, love her to bits. And Jane was given her 50th speech. So she was becoming what's called a DTM, or a Distinguished Toastmaster. And so there was a lot of people there to support her that night. And so somebody gave their first speech, I gave my 10th speech, Jane gave her 50th. And I gave my 10th speech, and afterwards everybody gave me all these wee bits of paper, and I took them all home with me that night, and I opened up the first one to read it, and it said something like, good speech, but you moved around too much. And I thought, throw that away. And then the second one, it said, I really liked your speech, but I was distracted by your moving or something. And I thought, were these people watching the same speech? I never moved. And when it got to the 50th one, and they all said the same thing, I thought, all right. So I phoned Jane, and I said, Jane, see, when I was giving my speech, was I moving? Oh, she said, oh my goodness, you were pacing like a tiger, or something like that. And so I had to accept that although I hadn't realised it, I was moving around, and I was so focused on what I was saying and trying to remember what I was saying, because I wasn't using notes. I was so focused on trying to remember, and I was so nervous that nervous energy had to come out somewhere, and it came out in the form of me pacing back and forwards on this stage, people going, ooh, 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 ooh. And but that was such a great lesson, because it gave me something to work on. And so the next time I gave a speech, I thought, right, I'm going to plant my feet. That's what I'm going to focus on. I'm not really going to worry about what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. I am going to plant these feet, and I'm going to work on that. And so over the next years, and I was a member of both Glasgow Toastmasters and Southside Speakers. I was actually the president of Southside Speakers. That's how I honed my public speaking skills. So I have gone from somebody who was an awful public speaker to somebody who is now very comfortable standing up and speaking in front of people, and more than comfortable, I absolutely love it. I love speaking to a room full of people. And I was having a conversation with a family the other day, and they were saying, oh my goodness, but your job must be really hard. How do you get up and speak in front of people? And I was saying, actually, I love it. And the more people there are in the room, the better for me, because you get a greater energy. You know, the largest audience I've spoken to is 800, and here in the Albert Halls in Stirling. And it was amazing. It was a funeral service. It was absolutely just such a celebration, but it was all those people, the energy of all those people coming together for the same common purpose of saying goodbye to their friend or other loved one. And so, yeah, so I absolutely love it. But it wasn't always like that. And so my answer to that question is, yes, I do think you can overcome your fear of speaking in public to go on and become a celebrant. However, I don't think your ceremonies should be your training ground for being a better speaker. I think if you really do have a fear of speaking in public, then deal with that first before you start going out and doing ceremonies. Of course, you will use the ceremonies. Once you get comfortable, you'll use those ceremonies to get better. And the more ceremonies you do, the better you'll become, because we should, regardless of what you're doing in life, should always try to be a better version of what we already are. So of course your ceremonies, you're thinking, right, how can I develop my skills? How can I grow myself as a professional speaker? Because that's what we are, professional speakers when we're celebrants. And so, but I don't think ceremonies should be where you begin to try and overcome your fear of speaking in public. Get that right. Go along to a Toastmasters club, sign up, and use that as a way of developing your skills, or get yourself a good coach, a good public speaking coach. I just happen to know one who will work with you one-to-one to develop those skills, and that's going to push you on much quicker than anything else. So if you're interested, drop me a line. Or use friends and family to practice your speaking and get effective feedback that is going to help you become a better speaker. So if you're sitting out there and you're thinking, I would love to become a celebrant, because this lady said to me, I've got really good people skills, I love meeting people, I love talking to people, I love writing, if you think you have all those skills that would make a good celebrant, but you have this fear of being able to speak in public, then it is something you can overcome. Don't just go and become a celebrant and then hope it gets better as you go. Use the time beforehand to develop those skills, so by the time it comes for you to go out and talk to couples, families, funeral directors, you are feeling like a confident professional celebrant.